Anyway, I wanted to read you a section here and then we'll talk about it a little bit. And this is actually a couple of pages long, so be patient. So, in this part of the book, Michael was he's retired now, and of course not working. But he was a foreign correspondent for the San Jose Mercury News and then Knight Ridder newspapers. And has been all over the world. So he's one of those guys, that's out there doing it, and often in very dangerous places. At this time in his life, which was the year after September 11th, he's in Pakistan, which is almost at war with India. And so it's a very tense situation. Plus, there are all the jihadis running around killing Americans just randomly. As where I'm going to read here, he has returned after a day of interviewing people to this hotel, which is basically a hotel for Westerners. And boom. So I'm going to read this. Late one night, I strolled to an outdoor patio area of the hotel to practice Tai Chi. I needed to clear my head after a long day of interviews with Pakistani military officials, some of whom were not merely resigned to war, but were eager for it to happen. It was past midnight, but the muggy air pressed against my skin like a hot, damp blanket. As I began the slow movements of a form, they felt different. My body was more agile and balanced, my motions more fluid. Every movement flowed from my middle dantian with a liquid quality that effortlessly delivered energy to the part of my body that was the focal point of the technique. I felt light but strong. My mind was calm and intensely alert. I was acutely aware not only of my movements, but of everything around me in a way not linked to my normal senses. My heightened state diminished a few minutes later when my thinking mind asked itself, "What is going on?" I had no answer. Had all the tension in my body melted in the warm, humid air? Had thoughts of nuclear war and vengeful jihadis so overloaded my brain that it underwent some kind of reset or self cleaning? Whatever had made my Tai Chi different didn't entirely disappear. As I continued to practice, I could feel a residue from those magical minutes. Something had changed. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I returned to my room. Notebooks and documents littered the desk and bed, reminding me why I was here. Trying to reconcile my journalism with my martial arts sometimes made me feel like a physicist trying to connect the cosmic with the subatomic. I dealt in two rooms with different laws and logic and had no unified theory to explain their relationship. I just knew they were both essential to my life and linked in ways I didn't fully understand. After India and Pakistan took a half step back from the brink, I returned to Beijing. A few days later, I went to Xinglong Park to train with Master Chen Xiang. I didn't mention my Tai Chi breakthrough in Islamabad, and he didn't mention noticing anything different in my movement. But a couple of days later, I went to Ditan Park, where Grandmaster Feng greeted me with a thumbs up gesture and a smile. "Chen Xiang told me your chi has dropped down to your dantian," he said. That's a great story. Um, when your chi drops to your dantian is the first really big milestone in Tai Chi training or the Tai Chi experience. It is not something you can make happen. It's like growing a garden. You can't make a garden happen. The garden happens on its own time, but you can cultivate the garden. All right, and you will get a better garden probably a little more quickly if you're cultivating it, taking care of weeding it and watering it and keeping the birds off it. Uh, it's exactly the same thing in Tai Chi. It happens spontaneously. It's a natural process. But you can certainly go through life after life after life and not have it happen just because you're not paying any attention to it. Right? Or you can pay some attention to it, cultivate it a little bit, and then it will happen when it will happen. It might be in this life, it might be in the next life, it might be 50 lifetimes later, but it will happen. Grandmaster Feng used to say, if you really, truly want to get Tai Chi, it takes 99 lifetimes, which I'm sure is a Chinese phrase for it takes a long time, right? Let me tell you my experience. I think I probably told you this before, but and this was without any doubt the biggest breakthrough that I had in Tai Chi. It's not about learning something. It's more about realizing something. And it's not realizing it with your brain, although that's part of it. It's about realizing it with your body. And the story I'm going to tell you is so simple that it's kind of like, well, why the hell didn't you get it before? Well, yeah, that's what you ask yourself afterward. Why didn't I get this before? So we had a student in class named John Ho. He was Chinese American. And he was, short, probably, this high. So compared to me, pretty short. But he was very stocky and very strong, very well built. And he was a great guy. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He was very warm. He was very nice to people. But when you did push hands, he really liked to challenge you. Not in order to beat you up, but just to challenge you. Are you actually grounded? Because he had a lot of martial arts experience. Are you actually grounded? Can you really defend yourself from me? So what he would do all the time is you would start the session just doing a drill, right? So maybe the forearm drill, do a forearm drill, and then pop, he would pop you in the middle of your chest, not hard enough to hurt you, but hard enough to knock you backwards if you weren't ready for it. And of course, when you're doing, you can do push hands without getting into that. Most of the push hands we did was non-competitive completely, but you can edge into the competitive part of it if you're comfortable with that. And later that afternoon, I think it was on a Saturday, later that afternoon, I was at Master Zhang's house for a private lesson. And as the private lesson started, he said, and he didn't speak any English, or very little English, and I didn't speak much Chinese. Nevertheless, we somehow managed to communicate, He said, look, every time you push with John, the same thing happens. Now, I'm translating what he was saying. The same thing happens. You raise your chi. He pops you in the chest, you raise your chi, and so you fall over backwards. Because he would watch us. He would stand there and watch us. And then he would just shake his head. And once or twice he said, cows. Cows. You fight like cows. So he said, you're raising your chi. It's like you're doing this. So just go the opposite way. Which one feels better grounded? This or this? So when he pops you in the chest, don't come up here like this, like you have to deal with his hands. He pops you in the chest, go down. go in. So he had me do this. And it was like, click. It wasn't just that particular, very particular thing. It was like you'd been stuck in a room and suddenly someone said, the door's over there, and you opened the door and you went outside. It's a whole different world. It's not one little thing that's changed, it's everything that changed. That was that was the moment when I understood what it meant to lower your chi. Now, the thing is, Jean had told me the same thing 100 times before. But I just wasn't ready to hear it. I couldn't put two and two together. You think, well, that's such a simple thing to understand. But it's not a matter of understanding it with your head, although that's part of it. You have to understand it in your gut, in your body. You see a young man or woman with really good dance moves. And maybe you try to get out there to dance and you feel all stiff and you just don't feel, how do you get from one place to the other place? How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Michael in his book says at least half a dozen times in the course of the book that he realized he was too stiff, that he needed to loosen up. And it literally took him 20 years. That little thing I read was the culminating moment when he wasn't trying to do that. It's just whatever happened, he just finally let go. He just let go of all that tension. Yeah, Kevin.
Well, I think another one, this is my feeling of one of his biggest breakthroughs, because he was just like me, a analytical doubting Thomas, and he didn't believe in any of this stuff. And then when he finally realized, well, I don't have to believe, but just stop not believing and then see what the hell happens.
Just keep an open mind. Well, the other thing that helped him believe was touching hands with Master Feng. Because he could not understand what Feng was doing and how he was doing it. But he could feel it. He could look up from the ground and go, how the hell did I get down here? The same with Chen Shan. But people with the skill level of Feng and my teacher Zhang and Chen Shan are very, very rare. There are a lot of martial artists in China, including in the Tai Chi world, including in Bagua and Xinyi, all the internal arts. They're good martial artists, but they don't have that internal power. So my teacher, Master Zhang, once said to us in class, speaking of himself, he said, I don't come up to Master Feng's ankles. And I think some people thought he was being modest. No, he was saying exactly what the reality is. Feng was genuinely a remarkable person. Not stronger, not younger, not faster, but he had abilities that seemed magical. Now, I don't think he was on his first lifetime doing this. Maybe he was on lifetime 96, right? So he's been far enough along. Same with Chen Shan. Um, I found finding the internal part of this, I had to go through the same steps that everybody goes through, that Michael was talking about. I mean, if you really were to look, the stories in a way are very different, but if you actually look at them, you go, oh, well, I went through the same steps, just in different contexts. Um, and I think that has to do with some experiences I had when I was much younger, long before I started Tai Chi. 10 years before I started Tai Chi with Master Jean. Um, and those were essentially what they call Kundalini experiences, where you have energy experiences in the body. And I had a very particular one that kind of opened the DANTIAN up. It opened a bunch of stuff up, but it opened up the DANTIAN. And then, I kind of didn't do anything with it for years, and then started Tai Chi, and found it to be relatively easy to discover where my Dantian was and to feel my Qi and to do all that kind of stuff. So I didn't have the same struggle with it that Michael had. And yet, if you actually look at the story, the points along the journey are still the same points. So my guess is this is not my first lifetime doing this either. I'm not anywhere close to Master Zhang, much less Master Feng. But um, but I found it relatively easy to do. Now, I think anybody who treats this seriously, hold on just a second. Sorry, some guy out there with a table saw going. Anybody who practices this seriously can potentially have this experience. The one thing you should never do is push it. Don't push it, because that will ruin it. Right? It'll actually slow things down. Don't push it. Just gently cultivate it. Right? And it happens on its own, just like a garden. Honestly, I don't think it matters what sex you are. I don't think it matters what age you are. I don't think it matters what your experience is. Because we are all far more complex creatures than we realize we are. And this potential is not, it's not really like a meritocracy, like someone who gets this is better than other people. That's not it. This is an absolutely natural process. It's not something that Tai Chi gives you. You already got it. You've already got a Dantian. Tai Chi's not going to give you one. Right? What Tai Chi gives you is a way to cultivate it. And there are other ways to do this. But this is a good way, and that's the one I've got. So I can't concentrate on more than one thing at a time. Ask Annie. I don't multitask. I just do one thing at a time. All right? So you guys have moved along far enough that you may begin to experience. Michael actually had a word for it, and I don't remember what language he used. But you begin to experience something going on down here. And it may be very subtle. It may be something that happens when you're practicing, like it did with Michael, or it may be something that happens when you lay down to go to sleep, or you're getting up in the morning, or you're standing in the shower. It happens. And very common symptoms of it are something like warmth down here, just a feeling of warmth, or a little palpitation, a kind of knocking, right? It may be here, it may be down at the perineum. It's just like, it's like the chick breaking out of the eggshell. All right. So just be aware and don't do anything about it because it's those symptoms are not the point. Those are just things happening along the line. But what you may feel as time goes on is a greater sense of being integrated and a greater sense of comfort and relaxation because you just drop into that feeling, and everything you do is, well, here's the best practice you can do to cultivate this. All right? In fact, let me put my sticker on. I shouldn't even be talking about my Dantian without my sticker. You should wear a sticker over all your clothes. All right? Even if you're wearing a suit, you should have a white sticker on. The most important thing is just to keep your mind on the Dantian. Because your consciousness is a form of energy. And when you are paying attention to something, you are feeding it energy. Literally. Not metaphorically, I mean it literally. So that's like, doing a little cultivation, watering it in the morning, putting a little fertilizer on it, but it grows on its own. But you just pay a little attention to it. And it doesn't matter, right? If you're doing shoulder exercises, pay attention. Right? If you're doing the form, pay attention. If you're doing standing meditation, pay attention. Master Zhang, Master Zhang used to tell us the story when he first started practicing, learning with Master Feng. He had a job. He worked in a factory that made airplanes or something. And he would get up real early in the morning, like at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they'd go out and practice for a couple hours, and then he'd go to work for 8 hours, and then he would come home and he would practice a little, and then when he laid down to go to sleep, he would continue practicing. Right when he was laying in bed, so he's just practicing, rotating, and he said Mrs. Young used to just lean over and smack him and say, "Zhang, stop practicing! I'm trying to sleep." I like that story. But you have to keep your mind on it all the time. And then what happens is you don't even realize what's happening. It starts to grow. It starts to grow and grow and grow. And what Funk said, I think, is absolutely true. It grows and grows and grows, because you're paying attention. It grows. And then at a certain point, it starts to condense. So it's not growing bigger, it's getting denser. And it condenses and condenses and condenses and condenses until it's no bigger than a grain of rice. That's the single crystal of Huanyan Qi. And that's the point that Michael came to. Without even consciously being aware that that's what was going on. But he practiced every day, even when he was in Pakistan, running away from jihadis and dealing with a potential nuclear war. He still went out and practiced at midnight. And the result of that is a kind of internal integration that is worth having. It does not cure everything. You are not suddenly some perfect person. Far from it. It doesn't solve all the problems that you may have or the world has, but it does make it different. You are in a different place. So it's a step on a longer journey. Somebody asked Master Feng once. There's a interview up on one of the Tai Chi websites, and the interviewer asked him, Master Feng, is Hunyan Tai Chi the Tao? You know, the Tao, the way. Is Hunyan Tai Chi the Tao? And Feng said, well, Hunyan Tai Chi is a little Tao that can take you to the big Tao. All right? And that's exactly right. Yes, there are many paths to the big Tao. This is one. It's one I like because it's about the body. And in our modern world, wow, the body gets short shrift. The physical body gets short shrift. In fact, we abuse it really badly. All right? Not that they didn't abuse it in past years too, they did too. But this is a way of cultivating the body and cultivating the relationship between mind and body, energy and spirit. And it works. It's slow. It's very slow. But then suddenly, out of nowhere, bam, it just happens. So was it really slow? Years of preparation? Or was it really fast? It was both.